warm bed and made it this morning. Recently, I heard about a man who spent his life in the Air Force. One of his friends suggested that the family play the Air Force theme song at his funeral. His wife vetoed that idea. With a laugh, she said, at your father's funeral, we're not going to play a song that begins, off we go into the wild blue yonder. Adam Schiff died in 2006, the age of 66. You may not recognize the name, but I guarantee you've heard the voice. Author was the TV pitchman extraordinaire. He sold everything you can think of and sold it by the trainload. Pots and pans, pantyhose, wrinkle cream, teeth whitener, windshield wipers, scratch removers, weed whackers. He sold it all. Anyone who's ever watched television in the graveyard hours knows Schiff's work. Likely has nodded, enchanted, amused, appalled, and got them to reach for their wallet and the phone. He accomplished this in some 2,000 late-night commercials. I know you've heard some of the commercials. Buy now, he'd always say. Then he'd describe whatever it was in amazing virtues of the product. Then he'd use a phrase that he coined himself, but wait, there's more. And he'd give you some other bonus product that would sweeten the pot, so to speak. And everything sold for just $19.95. Remember that? Only $19.95 if you buy today. Well, when Author was assigned to sell an uninspired steak knife, originally named the Quick Cut knife, he wrestled with just how he could present this boring named knife and sell it in an exciting way. In his sleep one night, he woke at 3 o'clock in the morning and hollered, "Eureka, I've got it! Ginsu!" He wrote down that bizarre word on a piece of paper and went back to bed. That name carried a whiff of Japanese-sounding precision. Ginsu. How many of you have a Ginsu knife in your drawer? I knew somebody had one or two. You all remember that commercial about the Ginsu knives. Author used the amazing tagline to describe the Ginsu. In Japan, the hand can be used like a knife. And he smashes tomato over the countertop. But he always said, this method doesn't work on a tomato. By giving that set of knives that Japanese identity, he says, I somehow managed to convince people that no matter how many knives they had in their drawers and they owned, there was something special about this knife that they had to have. And you got one, don't you? He said, of course, I neglected to mention that the knives were manufactured in Fremont, Ohio. Author was parodied by a series of late-night comics starting with John Belushi's Samurai Warrior. But he earned himself a place in the Pop Culture Hall of Fame when a comic character Opus, the Penguin, was portrayed as a helpless and addicted buyer of everything Author offered to sell. You know, I can't help but wonder. It was Author Schiff breathed his dying breath. We didn't hear a voice telling him, but wait, Author, there's more. Carshaw tells us in his book, Oddballs and Eccentrics, about Charles Radcliffe, the 5th Earl of Detterwater. Shaw calls Radcliffe a gamomaniac. Y'all know what that term means, right? Never heard of it? Neither had I. But it's kind of cool. Gamomania is the obsessive disorder characterized by persistent proposals of marriage. Now you've learned something new. Charles Radcliffe proposed on 15 separate occasions to the reluctant Countess of Newborough, who became so annoyed by the persistent and constant harassment that she bolted herself into her house and ordered the servants to throw him off the property on sight. The Earl finally found a way into her home by climbing up on the roof and lowering himself down the chimney into her drawing room, where it black from soot. He made his 16th marriage proposal. This time his persistence paid off, and she agreed to marry him. I guess she finally wore down. That's a remarkable story. 15 rebuffs, and he had to climb down the chimney before she accepted his proposal. That story is almost extraordinary as a riddle that some of the Sadducees posed to Jesus today. The Sadducees were the aristocratic group who were the most powerful politicians in Palestine. They rejected both the oral tradition of the law to which the Pharisees adhered and the belief in the resurrection and angels. They relied only on the Old Testament scriptures for their theology, focusing especially on the Torah. In this episode, they try to show that the doctrine of the resurrection is ridiculous. In referring to the custom of the Levirate marriage, where a man marries a deceased brother's wife, whose child is to raise children up in his name, find yourselves middle-aged or older. You remember that when the movie Seven Sons for Seven Brides, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, I'll get that movie right yet. I've seen it a couple of times. How many remember when that was released? Yeah. It's an exuberant, fast-paced musical about 7 brothers on the frontier of the United States who were looking for brides, which is a rare commodity. But of course, each one did in fact find a bride. The story in our lectionary passage for today is about one bride for 7 brothers. But at the end of the story, it's not very happy and it's not upbeat like the movie was. The story in part is a knockdown, drag-out debate or argument between Jesus and some of the most powerful opponents. It takes place in a temple in Jerusalem during the last week of Christ's earthly life. As we tell this story, we need to remember that the Sadducees did not believe in life beyond the grave. And so they posed this question to the Master, which Jesus answered in 2 parts. Teacher, this said, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife and no children, the man must marry the widow and have children for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first one married a woman and died childless. The second and then the third married her. In the same way, the 7 died, leaving no children. But the woman died too. Now, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be, since the 7 were married to her? That's quite a question. My first thought is, men, stay away from that woman. There's a problem here. It makes you wonder if she's not poisoned to get rid of them. 7 times a widow. But that's beside the point. We'll talk about that later. Theoretically, what the Sadducees want to know is, whose wife will she be in heaven? And again, the Sadducees didn't believe in heaven in the first place, as the text plainly notes. They're just trying to put out a trick question on Jesus to see if they could get him to say something that they could use against him later on. The Sadducees failed to see the discontinuity between this age and the age to come. The Sadducees' approach to this riddle was less than sincere also. They weren't interested in what Jesus had to say about eternity. That wasn't their point. They simply wanted to trip him up. As usual, Jesus was up to the occasion. He answered their real question about the resurrection. Based his answer on the writings of Moses, an authority they respected, he upheld the belief in resurrection. And Jesus replied, the people in this age marry and are given in marriage. But those who are considered worthy of taking part in that age and in a resurrection from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage, and they can no longer die, for they are like angels. Jesus' statement does not mean that people will not recognize their partners in heaven. It simply means that we must not think of heaven as an extension of life as we know it here. Our relationships in this life are limited by time, by death, and sin. We don't know everything about our resurrection life, but Jesus affirms that relationships will be different from what we're used to here and now. They're God's children. And since they are children of the resurrection, in the account of the bush, even Moses showed that the dead rise. For he calls the Lord the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. For to him all are alive. With this answer, Jesus was firmly putting himself into the camp of those who believe in the resurrection. Of course, it would not be long until he was making resurrection a reality by his own return from the grave. God is not the God of the dead, said Jesus, but of the living. For to him all are alive. When our hearts are heavy with grief at the graveside of a loved one, Jesus is saying to us, but wait, there's more. This is the most important good news that humanity has ever received. Everything else pales in significance. We hear of breakthroughs in the medical community from time to time, news about the progress of the war on cancer, on heart disease, on diabetes, and Alzheimer's. And we're grateful for that. We want to cling on to life. But deep in our hearts we know that these are only holding actions. One thing in life remains inevitable. We shall die. We shall lose people we love to death. There's no more hopeful good news that can come to us than which was announced 2,000 years ago. Death has been defeated. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? I hope no one has to convince you that there is life beyond the grave. And sometimes it seems too good to be true. But without eternity, life would make no sense to anyone. Many people fear death. Nothing can be more human than that. This world is so beautiful. Who would ever want to leave it? And life is so precious. We want to hold on to it as long as we can. It's no wonder people fear death. Neil Simon, who wrote The Odd Couple and Barefoot in the Park, was asked on the old Dick Cavett show whether making a lot of money concerned him. The studio went dead silent at that point. When Simon answered, he said, "No. What does concern me is the fear of dying." For some, the death represents the great unknown. We read the biblical accounts of the resurrection and we believe, but still there is that hesitancy that we all have. When it comes to talking about the hereafter, I like the words of St. Paul. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived what God's prepared for those who love him. Resurrection is not some natural right that we are given. It is a remarkable gift from the grace of God. Gratis. Some Greek philosophers believe that we are by nature immortal spirits. The human body and life on earth are but crude prisons that we endure like caged eagles. For them, immortality is our right, which is restored at death as we escape to our true element. Pessimists, on the other hand, said we die like any animal and that's it. Go to Ecclesiastes, and you'll find the emphatic despair. But Christianity says two things. To the pessimist, Christianity answers, no, you're wrong. There is a gift of life after death. Death does not snuff out the candle of our soul. To the Greeks, no, you are wrong. The body is not a cage. It's a good gift to be used in this life. Death is real to be sure, but it's not an escape, a loophole by which we escape the sentence of living on earth. God gives us a gift of life, earthly life and resurrection life. Both are gifts. Both are grace. General Wellington commanded victorious forces at the Great Battle of Waterloo that effectively ended the Napoleonic Wars. The story's been told that when the battle was over, Wellington sent the great news of his victory to England. A series of stations, one within sight of the next, had been established to send the code message between England and the continent. The message was sent that Wellington defeated Napoleon at Waterloo. Meanwhile, a fog was setting in while this message was being sent. And as a result, the message got interrupted. And some people only got the news of Wellington defeated. It wasn't until later that the fog cleared and the full message continued, which was quite different from the outcome that the people originally thought had happened. The same is true today. When many look at what happened on Good Friday, the death of Christ, they see only defeat. On Easter, at the resurrection, God's message was complete. The resurrection spelled victory. The Sadducees came to Jesus with a trick question. Not believing in the resurrection. They wanted Christ to say something that they could refute. But even so, Jesus did not ignore or belittle their question. He answered it. And then he went beyond it to the real issue. When people ask you a tough religious question, how can a loving God allow people to starve? If God knows what I'm going to do I really have free choice? If you get questions like that, follow Christ's example. First, answer the question to the best of your ability. Then look for the real issue behind it. The hurt over a personal tragedy, for example, or difficulty in making a decision. Often a spoken question is only a test of your ability to answer hard questions. But your willingness really is to listen and hear what's being said. I wish Arthur Schiff, the TV pitchman, could come back to tell us this morning and testify as to what the other side looks like. But wait, there's more. Of course, we do have some who have been to the other side and returned to tell us that he has prepared for us room in the Father's house. God is not the God of the dead, said Jesus, but of the living. For to him all